Oh, oh God. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Gabester here. This is the normal quick raid guide for the Fallen Protectors. If you'd like more details, you can click for the full guide, or for the tank, healer, or DPS sub-guides as needed. So let's get started. Now, during this encounter, you'll face Rook, He, and Sun simultaneously. They do not share health, and the basic goal of this encounter is to defeat all three of these bosses within 15 seconds of one another. If you get one of them to 1 hit point, they'll start a 15-second cast, at the end of which, if the others are not also at 1 health, that caster will heal for 20% of their total health. So, for the most part, you can do damage to whichever target the raid is attacking at the time, because you do not want to attack all of them simultaneously, generally speaking. Now, the reason you don't want to attack all three simultaneously is because of desperate measures. So throughout the fight, at every 1/3 health interval, so 66 and 33% respectively, the bosses will enter a desperate measures phase. And when they do this, they will basically spawn a new set of adds of some kind that will do something special. So here you can see this crazy bubble effect, plus a couple embodied spawns on the outside there, which is the desperate measure phase for Sun Tenderheart. So, overall, you want to focus on whichever of the bosses that your raid is doing at the time, get it to the next 1/3 health interval, deal with that particular boss's desperate measure phase, kill all those adds, the boss will come back, and then the normal phase will begin again, at which point you'd move on to the next boss, pushing them down that 1/3 interval, and so on. So Rook Stonetoe, who is the basic monk guy, you need to be careful not to get in front of him. He has a cleave attack of sorts. That's a cone in front of him. He also will cast Clash, which targets a random player, charges toward them, and stuns people. And then he'll do a spinning crane kick attack, hitting anyone nearby afterward. Lastly, he'll also throw his keg at you. So if you get hit by his keg, you'll take some moderate damage and be snared for a bit. Now, when he enters Desperate Measures, he will spawn 3 adds: Embodied Misery, Embodied Sorrow, and Embodied Gloom. Generally speaking, your raid should prioritize the Sorrow first, after which you can focus on the Misery and finally the Gloom. The Misery should be tanked by your tank that was tanking Rook at the time. Your tank that's on He Softfoot can just keep doing the normal stuff on He Softfoot. So Sun Tenderheart is pretty basic. If you are a healer, you should watch out for Shadow Word Bane. When this is applied to 2 random raid members, dispel it as quickly as possible, or it will jump to additional players and deal more damage. Also, everyone should watch for Calamity, which has a 5-second cast, at the end of which everyone will take 30% of their health and damage. So use a cooldown if you have one available for that. During Desperate Measures, Sun Tenderheart will spawn a shadow orb in the center of the room, which everyone should try to stand inside. This will prevent 35% of the damage that she's dealing to the entire room at the time. So it's just a good way to reduce damage. As you see here, everyone's in the middle there, getting that reduction. She'll also spawn these embodied despair and desperation adds on the outside, so your range can kill those, and your melee can kill the little spawns that come from them. Any damage dealt to the spawns is mirrored to the embodied spawner, so you don't have to worry about losing DPS on the main creature. And once you kill those, then you're done with that Desperate Measure phase. And then finally we have He Softfoot, who is the probably most dangerous of the 3 bosses. His basic abilities are mostly to deal with the tank, so he'll gouge the tank, but the tank that's on him can turn their back when gouge hits, and instead of being incapacitated, just be knocked away a bit. He also uses poisons on the tank, stacking dot poison as well as instant poison, and then he will also use Garrote on random raid members. This is a physical dot that lasts the rest of the phase until he enters Desperate Measures. So as the phase progresses before he goes into the Desperate Measure time, you will have a number of dots spread around the room. So just make sure healers are aware of that. Now, when He Softfoot goes into his Desperate Measure phase, things get a little tricky. He will cast Mark of Anguish on a random raid member, and this player will be the focus of the attacks from the Embodied Anguish spawn. Every time an Embodied Anguish attacks target, they'll get a stacking debuff called Shadow Weakness, and this increases the damage taken from Mark of Anguish attacks by 35% per stack. This goes up very quickly. However, Mark of Anguish also gives the player a new action ability, so your action button, and this can be used to pass the mark to a new target. So the basic idea here is when you become marked, wait for 4, maybe 5 stacks, then pass the Mark of the Anguish to a new target that has not gotten it before, and keep this process going until everyone pretty much has it or the embodiment has been killed. The only caution is not to pass the mark to tanks, because there's a debuff that will reduce armor by 50%, and this lasts 2 minutes. However, once the embodied is killed, all the shadow debuffs are removed, so you can do the phase a second time when you need to. So that's pretty much it. Just pass the mark every few stacks, and you'll get the Desperate Measure phase for He out of the way. So once you've pushed all 3 bosses below 33%, dealt with the Desperate Measure phases for the last time, it's time to kill them off. So get every boss to around 10% health, and then once they're at 10% or thereabouts, you can use in your personal DPS cooldowns or Bloodlust, whatever you've got, stack the bosses together, and then AE them down the rest of the way. This way you can ensure that they all die within that 15-second period, and you get the kill. So that is the quick raid guide for normal Fallen Protectors. As usual, good luck, and thank you for watching.